The Borgue Peninsula is nestled on the southwest coast of Scotland in Dumfries and Galloway. The name Borgue derives from an Old Norse word that means a fort or a prominent hill, and it is possible that this refers to the hill upon which the church sits in the town of Borgue itself. The area contains a large number of historic fortifications, many of which still leave their mark on the landscape today. Some of these are also candidates that may have provided the original source of the name Borgue. Castle Haven is one such fort. While the fort is called Castle Haven, locally it is still known as the Borgue, and sitting on the coast as it does, it would have made a striking impression on any Norse settlers moving to the area over 1,000 years ago. Following the coast, we soon come across the hill known as Barnhuch. This name is likely a mixture of Gaelic and Scots, bar meaning the summit of a hill, and huch meaning a crag or a cliff. Sitting at the bottom of the rocky steep beneath the hill is a cove referred to as Rumblecairn, the name being a reference to the sound of boulders rumbling together beneath the waves. There is little that can be seen of the old Iron Age fortification that once sat on the hill at Barnhuch, but sitting on the hilltop as it does, it would have been a prominent settlement. Heading southeast of Barnhuch is Muncraig, a name which most likely derives from the Gaelic Imben Crag, meaning at the foot of the rock. Evidence of the fortifications that once sat on this site can still be seen clearly today. A little further down the coast lies a rocky slope called Ring Dhu, another Gaelic name meaning a dark point of land. The dark seaweed-strewn rocks are still a feature of the landscape today. Barness sits less than 2 miles southeast from Ringdhu. This name, another derived from Old Norse, means the headland of the fort. The rocky cliffs at Barness were once the home to a promontory fort, the walls of which can still be seen clearly from the air. These fortifications are not the only prominent features that populate the Borgue coastline. Not far from Castle Haven are a collection of islands that together make up the islands of Fleet. The Murray Isles are the most westward of the islands off the Borgue Peninsula. The name appears to be at least a couple of centuries old, and no other name for the islands has been found. A little further down the coast lies Ardwall Island, a name that most likely comes from the Gaelic Ardagoil, meaning the height of the stranger, and this is probably a name that has been borrowed from the mainland. Over 1,400 years ago, this island was home to an early Christian settlement, and a stone carving of a cross from the 10th century would suggest that the site was still important to Christians over 400 years later. Just a few hundred metres southeast of Ardwall sits Barlocho Isle, the name of which possibly comes from Gaelic Bar Locha and means the summit by the loch, an odd name for an island, but this was also most likely borrowed from a nearby farm on the mainland, being situated next to a small loch and Bar Hill itself. While the Gaelic origin of the name seems the most plausible, there is an interesting alternative, and that is that the island is named Barlogad, a Brittonic name meaning beside the monastery, which would make sense given the island's proximity to the old Christian settlement on Ardwall. The final island along the Borgue coast is much further east towards Kirkcudbright Bay and is known as Little Ross Island. The name Ross is derived from the Gaelic Ross, meaning a promontory, and this appears to be another name borrowed from a nearby feature on the mainland. The feature in question is the Mull of Ross, or Maul Ross in Gaelic, meaning the bald rounded hill of the promontory. The history of Little Ross Island is marred by the murder of a lighthouse keeper in 1960. The assistant keeper had fled the scene, but was later arrested in Yorkshire and convicted of the crime. The lighthouse remains operational to this day. While the coastline of Borgue is rugged, there is evidence within the place names of areas which were once havens for landing boats. Kirkandrews is one such example. The name Kirkandrews was probably given to the town by Gaelic speakers after the kirk dedicated to St Andrew. However, an earlier name for the village can be found, and that is Porton. Porton could either come from the Gaelic Porton, meaning a small landing place for boats, or Port Toon, from the Old Northumbrian language meaning a small harbour farm. Kirkandrew sits where the mouth of the Polhuiren Burn meets the sea, and if we follow that burn inland, perhaps as the Norse settlers once did, we come to Roberton, where an old mill used to be situated, and Roberton Bridge below. The earlier name of that crossing stands as evidence to the old millworks that used to take place in the area. The Gaelic speakers named it Bulan and Sack, meaning the ford of the sacks. Continuing inland up the Polhuiren Burn, that name a descendant of the earlier Gaelic Pollahuren, meaning the burn of the rowan tree, the Norse settlers would have come across a fort now named Roberton Mott. This fort is likely to have had another name when the Norse arrived, Rod Trev, meaning chieftain's fortified farm in the Brittonic language once spoken here. Fortunately, the name Rod Trev wasn't lost. It exists today, passed on to a nearby farm called Ratra. Further inland up the Polhuiren Burn sits another fortification, Bar Magachan Mott. This name derived from the Gaelic for Macechan Summit, Bar Macechan, probably named by the Magachan family when they were granted the land in the late 1200s. If we trace our way back across the open fields towards Polhuiren, one place name we come across sheds a little light on what the now well-farmed land here would once have looked like. Kildarach. Kildarach derives from the Gaelic Coil Darach and means oak woodland. Nestled in behind Kildarach are the remains of a much later fort built in the 1500s. The name Plumton is believed to come from the Scots language Plumtun, meaning the plum tree farm, and while there don't seem to be any plum trees there today, the castle still strikes an imposing image on the landscape.